Good morning, Ash. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, good to see you.
Do we have quorum or should we wait a little bit? No. Okay.
Yeah, I would wait just a second or two longer and then we should have quorum.
Okay.
You do have quorum then, Michelle.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Welcome. Good morning. Okay. So good morning. Welcome to the Maricopa Regional Community of Care Committee meeting. For all participants, please mute your phone or your computer when not speaking, and please do not put your phone on hold. For all participants, we ask that you please identify yourself when speaking, and we will be reminding people to do that throughout this meeting. Okay. So we're going to do call to the audience. So please note that members of the public were given the opportunity to submit written comments relating to this meeting to the azmag.gov comment within 1 hour of the post start time for the meeting to increase public participation in a safe and virtual format that supports community discussion and public input during the Regional Community of Care Committee meetings. We will be following the same process as the Continuum of Care Board. So we invite anybody wanting to attend the meeting to request the Zoom link from the staff, or there will be an online form available on the MAG website to request the Zoom link. The public may attend the meeting and offer comments after committee discussion on each agenda item using the raise hand function in Zoom. So MAG staff, were there any comments received or anyone who has joined the call to offer comments?
No, Madam Chair, no comments were received at this time.
Okay, thank you. So we will now move on to the next agenda item, approval of the September 8th, 2021 meeting minutes. Do any member of the committee have questions or comments on the minutes? Okay. So could I have a motion to approve the September 8th, 2021 Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care Committee meeting minutes?
Aaron Rain, I vote to approve.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. And do I have a second?
I'll second the motion. This is Letitia.
Thank you, Letitia. Now I will ask Katie to proceed with roll call, and please indicate clearly how you vote, saying yay or nay after your name is called. Katie?
Vanessa Cartel.
Yay.
DC Ernst.
I'm going to abstain since I was not at the meeting.
Okay. Leticia Gambino.
Yay.
Michelle Jameson.
Yay.
Anne Marie Johnston.
Yay.
Laura Magruder.
Yay.
Jennifer Page.
Yay.
Detective Aaron Rain.
Yay.
Cindy Ramirez.
Yay.
And Richard Cruz, not to put you on the spot, but we are currently passing the minutes. Would you like to vote?
Aye.
Awesome. The motion passes.
Thank you. We're going to agenda item number 4. TJ Reed with the Regional Homeless Project Manager at MAG will provide an update and walkthrough of the Regional Action Plan. TJ?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, good morning, everybody. Katie, can you pull up the presentation? And I'm just going to walk through some of the work that's been done around the Regional Action Plan. The next slide. So just so you all know, the last time that we had this conversation, we have this on every agenda to just provide updates and make sure that the feedback of this group is incorporated. This is just an overall time frame of what has happened over the last year or so. We had that initial outreach and research happening. The regional strategies were adopted by this board and the regional council. Those were a list of high-level strategies of things that we wanted to prioritize. And now it was, let's take those strategies and move into action. So what is something tangible, what is actionable that we can do as a community, and specifically our local and tribal governments to really engage with in a way that they have not before. Next slide. So this plan has actually been reviewed and focuses on reducing the number of homeless folks in our region, increasing the assistance available, and then also just preventing people from getting into the system. We were able to have 2 feedback sessions from the providers. There were provider focus groups, and we presented multiple times to the board and had work groups with the board outside of it. So the goal of this for you all is really to just make sure that you see it and that you if you have any feedback or questions, that you can provide that in this space or after via email. Next slide. And so this is just what I described. Next slide. So this is really focused on the immediate, but also then the long-term actions related to local and tribal governments that they can take in partnership with people like yourselves and other sectors to really make a dent in homelessness regionally. So there are 3 primary actions that all of our steps fall into. It's commitment to regional work, increasing housing options, and then supporting diverse partnerships. So the first one is really that regional work. And the goal here is to increase ongoing financial and in-kind buy-in and resources from all local and tribal governments. So this is something that really hasn't ever happened, is our whole region getting on board with focusing and prioritizing homelessness and taking at least one action that is new or different than what people have done in the past. The next is really improving access to homeless data. We're really trying to ensure that decision makers have the right kind of data at the right moment so that they're informed with good information. I'm sure you have, as well as myself, have heard plenty of statistics thrown around that may perpetuate stigmatization of homelessness or certain approaches that are not as effective. And so this is meant to really provide good data. And this feeds in really well to the next one, which is everybody buying into a regional public education campaign, that we may even hire contracted marketers to be able to work with us to identify language around both destigmatization of homelessness and clarifying messaging around that, and then also affordable or workforce housing, the pros of adding that in your community. And then lastly is really just, as this is a longer term commitment as a region, to really track our progress, not only just in reduction of homelessness, but in our specific tasks. If we're going to create an action plan, we need to keep track of what is happening. Otherwise, there's no point, right? It's just something that is nice to throw on our shelf to say we passed something. And that's not really what we're going for here. So the next one is increase safe housing options. So we break this really down into the 2 categories of temporary, so like shelters, and permanent housing like rapid and PSH. These specific numbers were determined based on analysis from HMIS data, projecting out what this next year of increases will look like. And so based on this, if we add 770 temp units and 1,225 permanent housing units, that would reduce the projected homeless population in our community by 25%. And that number was decided upon to really push us, but make sure it's feasible. We want to be uncomfortable. We want to be aggressive because there's no way that we're going to solve this problem unless we're really prioritizing and working on this together. The next few are related to efforts that are going on right now. Rental units, increasing that access to that. The county has a landlord engagement effort right now that they're working on with Home Inc. that many of you may have already been in touch with. It's to incentivize landlords to accept vouchers and participate. It's also to mitigate damages, and it's also to have a one-stop shop for them to ask questions. The next is really to really evaluate and enhance our coordinated entry system. This was adopted by the board as a part of the regional strategies, and then is also something that we do yearly as a continuum anyway. So this is something as in the spirit of continued growth and improvement. We want to do that. The last one here is really related to diversion and reducing evictions through three things. One is anybody who needs rental assistance knows where to get that rental assistance or eviction prevention. Two, everybody who is going through the process has legal representation or legal knowledge. And so the county has contracted with community legal services to be in all the justice courts. So it's to make sure that everybody has access to the appropriate legal service. And then the last piece of that one is housing stability. So if people are being evicted for things other than non-payment of rent, that we are, the landlord and the service provider and the client themselves are aware of what they can connect with to support them through that. So if it's substance use, if it's mental health, if it's anything, people can get directly connected into the services that are appropriate for them. Next slide. And then the last one is in diverse partnerships. So really working with police, criminal justice systems. That a lot of this is around community courts. There's been a lot of interest and feedback across the county related to implementation of community courts. Some of these already exist. Some of them exist in one way, shape, or form, whether it's a homeless court or a vet's court or something. But the goal is that it reduces barriers for people to get into housing. And we want to identify where some of those gaps are and see who is interested in implementing in different communities. We have a couple that are coming online that have been approved through councils, which is really exciting. The next one, it's increasing access to local services primarily through street outreach. We are really encouraging more of our local and tribal governments to contract or establish outreach that is connected to the system to make sure that people living on the streets are not just, their only engagement is through emergency room visits or police. It's with street outreach in addition to those things. The next is really integration of employment. We're really focusing on like public-private partnerships to ensure that those who are actually experiencing homelessness can get connected to the right things at the right time and not just kind of remaining with a barrier of income and or employment. And then the last one is for each local and tribal government to really establish interdepartmental teams. We know homelessness does not just engage with one department. So it's not like they just go to the human services department at some local or tribal government. They're going to libraries, they're engaging with the police department, they're engaging with Parks and Rec. So for local and tribal governments to come together and really respond in a cohesive way with all of those departments speaking the same language is something that's really important. Next slide. Next one. So the next steps here and the time frame is we've been soliciting lots of feedback through September. October, we're offering the drafts for review and comment. So Many of you have already seen this. We had the provider focus groups. I know a couple of you were on some of those. We've sent that out. I believe it's attached to Katie. So the draft is attached to if you go onto the calendar invite and click where the agenda is, it is located there as well. So please review, and if you have any other feedback, do so. But that's what's happening in October. November and December is really where we're offering it for action through the COC board, through the management committee and regional council. And then January is really where a lot of the work kind of takes off even further, is the implementation of this. After all the feedback and approval has gone through, then let's continue to expand. Like I said, some of these actions are already being done, so it's not like we're waiting to do things. It's just that like having it formalized where everybody's bought in will happen in January. Next slide. All right, and then you all hopefully know my contact information, and then Amy St. Peter, her contact information is here. So we can take any questions or comments now, but also if you want to, you can reach out to me offline, phone call, text, email, whatever is best for you to connect on this. All right, back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, TJ. So now we will have TJ again. He will provide us with the learning management system. So we'd like to just have them right in order. So take a big go, TJ.
Yay. Well, all right. So there's an opportunity that has presented itself that we really wanted to make sure that this group was aware of. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with learning management systems. I'm sure some of you, especially in the mental health sphere, are probably too familiar with learning management systems. But the idea is that you have a centralized location that is virtual, that allows and provides that repository for trainings. So this can, specific to homelessness, can be things like mental health first aid. It can be homelessness 101, coordinated entry 101, trauma-informed care, motivational interviewing, like all of these things that are really standard practice for homelessness. And then we can also talk about best practices within each of the subcategories. So the goal of this discussion is to just inform you that we are having conversations on this right now. So one, Pima has already been doing this, and initially they had reached out to Maricopa County, and we had passed on the opportunity. We're picking up the conversation again. This is an opportunity not only to potentially partner with them, but to provide a couple of layers of standardization in our community. For right now, the initial aim, and this is going to be subject to a lot of more feedback, but the initial aim is, first of all, just let's start. Let's get some trainings available to the entire community in one location, like for the Shared Housing Institute or some HMIS trainings. The next step, though, is how can we tie this into policy to make sure that standard best practices are available and accessible to every single provider? So if I'm a shelter provider, I now have access to this standard set of shelter trainings, of best practices for shelter, trauma-informed care, again, motivational interviewing, all those things in a standard way, so that you don't necessarily have to do all of this on your own. It is something that you would have the same training as shelter A, B, C, D, and we can really tie into ensuring that standardization across the board. So in terms of the next steps, we're presenting to the board for the board to create a work group on this, if they approve that. And the work group would hopefully incorporate some of you if you're interested. And the idea would then be to move forward on the way that we think would be best in terms of what should be included, how we want to lead that effort, et cetera. But this is a pretty exciting one. I know many of you, I've probably talked to you, and many of you have already had conversations around this in the past of like, how can we do this better as a community, where we have one-stop shop for training, where we have standardization of best practice trainings for each of our interventions, et cetera. So again, I'm here if you all have any, I know this is for information and discussion. So if anybody has questions on this or the previous PowerPoint, feel free to, chime in now. Madam Chair.
Okay. Is there a chart? Will there be a cost for providers for this service?
No, the intent is that we are working to cover the cost entirely through other funders and or planning dollars from MAG.
Dolores? Question?
Is there any talk about trying to make these CEs where people could get credit for licensure?
I think that's an option, and I think the work group would really be the best space to bring that. I think that's a great idea. I'm not sure exactly like the level that we would need to do that. However, I know PIMA and our initial conversations around this involved getting with trainers and contracting for content that would be at that level. So I don't think that would be that big of an issue. I just don't know some of the technicalities of the CEU process. So if you or others are in that work group, that would be a perfect thing to bring up for feedback. Any other questions?
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Dolores. Oh, she just gave a thumbs up, so I guess it's not a question. Okay, so are we good? All right, thank you. Now we will move to agenda item number 6, and that is, oh shoot, Ash, I'm not going to be able to, Ash, how do you say your last name?
It's funky. It's us. As if there was only one us. Yeah.
Okay, so Ash, thank you very much. Executive Director from the Ground Up will provide an overview of the Learning and Action in Policy and Partnership project. So the project integrates HMIS data and the 3 COCs with Medicaid information to better understand homelessness and provide person-centered approaches. So Ash.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, all. My name is Ash S. I won't take up that much time today. I just wanted to talk to you all a little bit about a project that I'm involved with. As Michelle said, this is part of something called the LAP grant, and I'm sure many of you or some of you are familiar with this grant. It's a project that involves the 3 COCs as well as Access and DES and the Arizona Housing Coalition, and it's part of a statewide effort to integrate data. And so I'm sure many of you have either heard or experienced directly that it can be frustrating and challenging at times that our systems don't communicate particularly well with one another. If you need to get data, sometimes it can take a little while to get that information. If you're referring someone to one agency, you and the client usually know that they're going to be filling out the same information or providing the same information, just in a different referral, but for the same purpose. And so the overarching goal of this project is to build a data warehouse that integrates this data so that we can make the experience of clients and providers more efficient, ideally less painful or re-traumatizing for people to have to go through the process. And so where I come in as part of this project, I was hired to go across the state and facilitate some focus groups and some surveys with clients who are using homeless services or behavioral health services, with providers who are actually providing those services, and then also with stakeholders at some more higher level systems work who need to access data for reporting and funding, things like that. And so I'm hoping to be able to schedule some focus groups with those groups. And there's also an online survey. I know that people are pretty surveyed out, and it's kind of a pain to have another survey to fill out, but this information is really important to collect because the data that I'm working to organize will ultimately be what's used in actually writing the RFP for this data warehouse. And so your perspectives, the perspectives from the people that you work with at your organizations, they're all really important to have so that we can make sure that this warehouse is something that actually benefits people. We want to keep in mind the concerns or the fears or anxieties of both providers and clients, because we don't want to invest all of this time and these resources in building a system that isn't really going to accomplish the goals that we all have of, making it less, difficult for people to end their homelessness. And so I have a Google form, Katie. I know that the chat is disabled, so I could send it to you, but if you all could just take a quick second, and I'll send it to you now, Katie. The Google form just asks for your name, your email, your organization, and if you'd be willing to either participate in a focus group or just take the online survey, and then I would send it to you. It takes about 10 minutes to complete. It's not very time consuming at all. That's probably the easiest way to get all of this information to you. I don't know if any of you have questions about this process or the kind of information that I'm hoping to gather. I also wanted to keep some time for questions. I tried to provide a quick overview, but does anyone have any questions about any of that?
We are a quiet group today, and you must have you did a great job with your presentation. So I guess we have no questions. But please reach out to Ash and participate in the survey that Katie will send to us. So, thank you, Ash. So the next is agenda item number 7, which we're going to talk about the committee membership and chair. And Katie, the Human Service Planner with Meg, will provide an update on community membership and the chair, and ask for any interested members to join a membership work group. I am really happy. Several of you have reached out to me and interested in learning more about the chair opportunities. So I really encouraged about the participation from the group. So thank you, Katie.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So each year we open up membership for the committee in October, and that membership is for a 3-year term going from January to December. So interested committee membership would start in January and then go for the next 3 years. And you all represent a pretty diverse group of stakeholders, but we are still specifically looking for faith-based organizations, faith-based organizations, businesses, PHAs, and universities. And we only have one seat that is currently leaving, which is Michelle's seat, although US Vets is eligible to reapply for their seat. The process to do membership is there's a brief kind of application, I guess, of about 10 questions, and then uploading your resume. And we recruit this through SurveyMonkey. So I will be sending that out to the COC board committee and all of our mailing lists by the end of today. So if you know anybody interested who would be a good fit for the committee, please feel free to send that along to them. And if you have any questions about the application or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me or anybody at MAG. And then also, as part of recruiting new members, we need to form a membership work group. And this membership work group would be reviewing those applications that come in and then bring forth recommendations to the rest of the committee in November. So are there anybody who would volunteer to be interested in participating in this work group? I'm guessing the work group will meet 1 to 2 times to review those applications, depending on how many applications we receive. Sheila, is that a yes, I volunteer?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Sheila.
We have a couple more volunteers.
Come on, it'll be fun.
So Katie will be sending an email out encouraging everybody to maybe join the membership committee. I would, but I'm most likely going to apply for US Vets. So I think it would be a conflict of interest.
And so then in addition to membership, we're also seeking 2 new co-chairs, as Michelle's seat will be lapsing. And so I know some of you have expressed interest in being a co-chair. And so anybody who is interested, you can submit your resume and a letter of interest to me, and this will be brought to the committee in November for a vote. And we are looking for 2 chairs. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me, or I'm happy to answer them here too.
Katie, this is Letitia from UMOM. I'm interested in the membership committee.
Awesome. Thanks, Letitia.
I have a question, Katie, it's not related to the chair position. Did you already send out, like you said, to let people know? So is there a way we, or some materials that we can give people that like meet the requirements for what we're recruiting for so that they can apply?
Yeah, I will be sending out the Survey Monkey after our meeting today, and it's just a link, and then they would fill that out, and it includes attaching their resume in that Survey Monkey, and that email will also include kind of what we're looking for and what the committee entails.
And not for this round, but in the future, like it seems like there's things that have changed during COVID that maybe would indicate that maybe there might be other areas where we could recruit in the future. Like I think like public health or things like that, that maybe we haven't thought about. Like, will there be an opportunity to maybe give that input later? I get that we already have priorities now and there's only one seat, but just something to think about.
There's actually more than one seat. So you all don't have like a limit on your committee membership. It's mostly about who would be a good fit.
Okay.
And so those are just the priorities of what you don't currently check the boxes of on your membership matrix. But I hear what you're saying, and we are trying to recruit on a like more vast scale. So if somebody from public health makes sense and you think of a good contact, please send them to me, and we're happy to do reach out, or you can as well.
Okay. Yeah. I was thinking about public health, and then the other area I was thinking was somebody, I know we have PHA, but somebody that like has landlord recruitment skills, or either from an agency or from like an organization like Home Inc. or from the county or the Arizona Multi-Housing Association or something like that. So those are just a couple of things I was thinking about. So I just want to kind of put it out there, but.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. And I wrote both of those down. So thank you for sharing.
Cool.
Any other comments or questions? All right, back to you.
All right, thank you. We will now go to agenda item number 8, the Continuum of Care Charter. And Katie will provide an update on the charter and ask for any feedback. Katie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I sent out the committee charter to you all and received some feedback based on the biggest place that you all recommended changes was absenteeism. So right now, currently, you have to miss 4 consecutive meetings, and at that point, your seat would be considered vacated. And after 3, you receive a warning. And the recommendation that we got from both your committee and other committees is to move that to 3 consecutive absences with 2. After 2, you would receive a note of asking you to attend. The other place that we would really like some feedback from you all is your roles and responsibilities. The only feedback that we received is we don't really see the tie from this to the board. And the board has also kind of acknowledged that, but I would love to just have a brief discussion kind of about are there any other things that are in your current roles and responsibilities that you feel need to be highlighted more, or that you're already doing that we should capture into the roles and responsibilities?
This is Cindy Ramirez with CPLC. I haven't submitted my feedback yet, as I've still kind of adding to it. But what I was looking at most, I'm a very visual person, so I was trying to chart out, what is in MAG's role, what would be within the board, and then what is within the COC. So not just looking at our roles and responsibilities in the committee, I'm sorry, I meant committee in that last sentence, was how much is the committee mentioned throughout this document, and then where is that overlap? And so as I was looking through the document and the other sections, like the coordinated entry subcommittee and some of the other subcommittees, there's a lot of mention of MAG or the board, but there's very little mention of the committee in tying to any of these other subcommittees or work groups. And so if the committee is tasked with one of the roles and responsibilities, I think it's the there's one in here that's about the continuous improvement of these systems, but there's very little mention of the committee in these other systems, in the other work groups, and the ties together. I was just wondering if maybe there needs to be, an evaluation of whether or not the committee should be involved, whether or not there should be a tie, if there's just no mention of it. So it makes it look as if there is no responsibility there.
Thanks, Nikki, for sharing that. And it will kind of the next step is to bring this feedback to the board work group that's specifically working on the entire charter. So I think that's definitely heard. Do you have any feedback as to whether you would want the committee tied to all of those, or do you feel like it's the board's responsibility to be connected? I heard you ask the question of, does there need to be a greater tie? Do you have an opinion on that?
So my personal opinion is that if we're tasked with the improvement of systems continuously, then we need to be tied to those systems. If we're not continuously engaged with, and I'm just throwing examples out there, if we're not continuously engaged with the coordinated entry subcommittee, because there's no language in there describing that we should be, or that we have a responsibility to even check in on the status, and that's just between the subcommittee and the board, then it just feels like that might be a way that there's a disconnect between what the committee is supposed to do and whether or not it's being done. So I'm not sure myself whether or not if that's intentional and that's how it should be, and there's not a role for the committee in that, and that's fine. But it just seemed like there was not very much mentioned of the committee in the ties to the other groups, including the board. And so I actually am just finishing up my notes, and I can submit those as well for consideration within that work group. And these are just my recommendations.
That would be great. Thanks.
I just would like to say thank you to Nikki for saying those things. I feel similarly about it, and I just want to kind of second or plus one your comments. So.
Thanks, Sheila. Any other thoughts? Okay, Michelle, back to you.
Okay, thank you. I can't see anybody. I'm not sure if it's something I did on my end. So let's see. Oh, there. Get dependent on seeing faces. So thank you. So we're going to go to agenda item number 12. So I'm going to pull the agenda item 12 out of order before we move to updates. This was sent out as an addendum to an agenda to provide an overview of the supportive services for veteran families, our SSVF shallow subsidy program. So I would like to, Katie, if you'd like to pull up my presentation and I can go over it with the committee. Thank you.
Hold on 1 second. Okay. Too many tabs open.
It's a new program that we're going to be implementing our SSVF providers for veterans November 1st. So we're really excited about this. I want to share it with everyone. We don't see anything, Katie. Oh, there it is. Okay. I literally woke up at 2 in the morning, which our community providers are, let's see this. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to maneuver my, okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Thanks for bearing with me. So we have the shallow subsidy, which are the basics, and they are going to be implemented by all the grantees in Maricopa County, which with community health partners, we have CBI, US Vets, and UMOM. So this is a service of SSVF, but not a separate program. It's a 2-year commitment by the grantee to the household, and it can be augmented by local funds and other non-federal resources. What this will do is provide a stable monthly rent subsidy amount with a maximum rate of 35% fair market rent or rent reasonableness. There are possible changes that will be coming in November. We're most likely going to be at 50% fair market rent. So coming in November. Katie, okay, thank you. The subsidy is a fixed amount of the 24-month commitment. So this differs from rapid rehousing, which is a deeper subsidy, but a shorter term. So there's no recertification required for this 24-month period. There's no disincentive for an increase in income, which is really nice. Veterans can also be recertified at the end of the 24-month period if they are income eligible at this time. So they must be eligible for SSVF and enrolled in the SSVF prevention or rapid rehousing. So this is an important one, is you can't go right into shallow subsidy. They need to be in prevention or rapid rehousing and then progressively engaged thereafter. Next. So the veterans that will be successful or that will be in this program require minimal supportive services or tenancy supports. So they have the availability to pay the balance of rent, but they just need that extra assistance. This is different than HUD-VASH, which they need moderate rental assistance, and this is how it differentiates from HUD-VASH. So an example of this is if a veteran, has $1,200 rent, but it's just having a really hard time. Maybe they make $1,500 a month. They're like, I can't, it's really tough. They're not able to provide food or other basic living necessities. So then the shallow subsidy could go in and say, we'll provide $400, which then that veteran has the ability to just pay that $800, and it'll help them be able to stay successfully in that unit. Next. They could have the ability, so veterans that will be looking for in this program, or they have the ability to grow their income, they have ability to get a job, or maybe some source maybe to increase their benefits over time. They have fixed income, such as retired seniors or disabled veterans. They'll be on the waiting list if someone's on a waiting list for affordable housing or shared housing opportunities, and they would be a good candidate if they are a veteran, but for this financial assistance. Next. Veterans can be transitioned from a traditional SSVF rapid rehousing or prevention, and they're expected to be the part of progressive engagement approach, and they must be enrolled initially in rapid rehousing or prevention for eligibility, HMIS, and grant management. Next. What we talked about before is that they need a lighter level of case management. So the case management would be maybe monthly documented check-ins, to verify that they're in their rental units, they're making their payments, and if they're able to continue to make their rental assistance payments. The check-ins will be documented in HMIS and their client files. And the grantee must have the ability to elevate supportive services if needed. So if we're finding that that veteran's struggling, we need to put in, the grantees will be putting in more supportive services as needed. Next. Transition. So the transitions to permanent subsidy is if they were waiting for a voucher, a subsidized unit, project-based assistance, then they can transition there, or at recertification. So if a veteran has increased income through employment, benefits, or others, they will be terminated if they do not no longer meet that income eligibility. If veterans have not increased their household income, recertification is possible for an additional 2 years if they are income eligible. Next. So they will be terminated if they abandon their units or they have an unknown whereabouts. So they're unable to locate the veteran, or if they're incarcerated for a period of 90 days or longer. But eviction alone is not a reason for termination from the SSVF program. Next, thanks. So what we're doing is we're planning and strategizing with the community. We do have a community meeting tomorrow as well. Engage the community. We want to just refine the processes, create messaging and marketing, and coordinate with local COC for HMIS reporting requirements. So we're really excited about this opportunity. It has been a pilot program in other communities. This is new to our community, so we will be putting this out November 1st. Okay, next. I think there's one other screen, but it just says that it's the VA is where you can get that. So if you go to the VA website under shallow subsidy, or and just the shallow subsidy, you can get in more information. Is there another?
This is your final slide, Michelle.
It is? Oh, I must not have done it. Okay. So it is off the VA website. I must have added that a little bit later. So thank you. If you want to just take that down, Katie, and then I can look at. If anybody has any questions, oh, thanks. I really like to see, I get dependent on seeing faces. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions? We're really excited about implementing this into the community. Okay, I must have just did a great job presenting and everybody's questions are answered. Going forward, there probably will be more questions as we work things out, but it is I'm so excited about this. I think it will really reduce a lot of homelessness, but also returns to homelessness. And with the increasing rents, we've been hearing about rent increases by $400, $800 a month or $500. So we're excited to be able to implement this with our veterans. All right, so if we have no questions, we will move on to agenda item number 9, which is an update will be provided on legislative issues of interest, and the Maricopa Regional Community of Care Board subcommittee members will provide an update on the recent activities. This item was requested as ongoing agenda item by the committee. And I lost my place. Sorry, the committee to remain informed about the working, how we're working legislatively and in the various subcommittees. So we will hear first from the Coordinated Entry Subcommittee, Matthew Kelly, Lead Housing Liaison with Mercy Care. Matthew.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay? You can?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, sometimes my headphones work, sometimes they don't. So thanks for having me. I just want to give you all a quick update, and a lot of our updates are actually kind of a continuation of a lot of the work that we've been doing over the past couple of months. So let me get to my notes real quickly. Apologize. So primarily, first and foremost, I do want to start by saying we have a full committee in the Coordinated Entry Subcommittee as of right now. We have just recently added Ashley Bratz from Cass and Levon Lammy from the city of Tempe. Ashley represents, I believe, singles, and Levon is representing ESG. So we do have a completely full committee at this point in time of 13 individuals, which is great. It's the first time in about a year and a half. So the work that we've been working on, we've probably talked about this a number of times, but we've been working on integrating the ESG homeless prevention dollars into the coordinated entry system. We do have a draft document of the evaluation tool that we're going to be using. We've received input from racial equity partners. We've met with the prevention providers and gotten their input with regards to this. We will be pulling together all of that information and along with the policy, and we're going to be presenting it back at the committee. These are not dollars that are necessarily funded through the COC, so we don't need to go through the formal board approval process, but we wanted to make sure that the committee had time to review and give us any final feedback on the document. So if there's anything glaringly that we've missed with regards to this entire process, that you all can have that feedback and input to us. So I will have to be able to come back next month and probably be on your agenda to do that. So Katie, just as an FYI. So that's kind of where we stand on that, but we have most of that work done. So we're kind of excited to get that up and running. And it looks like hopefully once we've got your all's feedback, we'll be able to schedule the training with our providers and kind of start the rollout process for that. With regards to the racial equity work group, we did have a debrief session with all of the individuals who are part of the larger conversation with the 4 different communities that kind of gave us their feedback. There was a lot of, I think, general disagreement with regards to how to proceed. About half the group talked about eliminating the VI SPED altogether. Half the group talked about keeping it. So we're going to kind of continue this conversation as we kind of move forward. And our next step is really to bring this through to the Lived Experience Council to get feedback on how they would like to move forward, and also just kind of the information that we received. My understanding is that there is a application process that's being built out for the Lived Experience Council. So I'm kind of waiting to hear back with regards to that application process so that we can get on their agenda to present. And so as we kind of move forward, there'll just be continued conversation. So the work has continued, but I think that as we kind of look at racial equity, I think that the scope gets a little bit larger and larger and larger every single time we have this conversation. So it's been a good conversation. We've started and we've really focused in on the tool, but I think it's also time to really focus on coordinated entry as a system as well, and kind of looking at the entire continuum of what coordinated entry is. We all know coordinated entry is not just a VI SPDAT, it's a much larger system. So kind of evaluating the entire system for racial equity and disparities that we might be wanting to look at, and kind of breaking that down a little bit more. So more to come with that, but again, we're continuing that conversation. Those are kind of the big things that we've been working on right now. We've also been kind of working on getting into some specific data points within the coordinated entry work group, and we're kind of starting to break down the entire coordinated entry process and work with the committee to really decide what data points are we interested in looking at, or what questions are we really interested in asking about different aspects of coordinated entry, and then kind of backing into some data points to kind of build our own specific dashboard that would be specifically for the coordinated entry subcommittee. Those have been pretty robust conversations, and now that we have 13 people, there's a lot of input and feedback, and so it's been a little bit slow to go, but I think we have a process and we have a system to kind of really have a healthy discussion and kind of get some questions answered and back into some of those data points. So we're looking forward to having that continued conversation. Are there questions on the work that we're doing at this point, or any recommendations? Okay, cool, thanks.
Matthew, you must have done a great job too explaining. So thank you.
It's really, really quiet, yes.
I just like to give those positive reaffirmations. So Joan Service, the COC board member, is not able to attend today, but she does continue to work on the legislative priorities for homelessness, including hashtag House Arizona campaign. So she's working on that. So do any of the members, I don't think we have any questions because we already with Matthew. So with that, we will move on to the next agenda item with requests for future agenda items. Do any community members have an action or discussion item for future meetings? We have a quiet group today.
This is Cindy Ramirez with CPLC. I just wanted to ask, I don't know if it was like a year ago now that we had thought of maybe reducing the meetings to every other month. And at that time, everybody seemed to support keeping them monthly, and then had a list of items that we were interested in discussing. Is there any update you can provide on where we're at with that list? If we've already discussed all of those items, if there's anything we haven't really dug into yet, if any, maybe we can revisit the list as a group and see whether or not any of those items need to, or something that we should have as recurring items, maybe quarterly. I just don't quite remember everything that was there, and I don't know that we've gone through all of it.
Madam Chair, Board Member Ramirez, I can review that list and find out kind of where we're at and bring it for discussion in November.
Thank you.
Chayla?
Yeah, this is Chayla Schuster from Community Solutions. I have a couple of comments on that. I also agree with Nikki that I'd like to see that list. Also, like the board meeting agenda for the COC board, like I feel like there's a lot of things that maybe for the future board meetings that if there are opportunities for us to make comment on some of the things that will be coming up, so that we can make sure that like we've given our input or had our voice, that might be helpful. Like as far as like when we meet, like knowing if there's anything that we need to present, and maybe the co-chairs are doing that, I don't know. The other thing I want to say is that in regards to the quiet and the other things, I do think there's some Zoom fatigue, and I understand there's a global pandemic, but I'm wondering if there's been conversation about when it might be safe or appropriate to be able to have in-person meetings, whether they're masked, whether they're, there's requirements around them. But I do think that it makes it really challenging to continue to have these meetings online. And I've heard a lot from other community members that are not on the committee that it's very difficult for them to participate since they're on YouTube. So I'm wondering if there's any opportunity or any discussion around potentially being able to have some in-person meetings within, the next few months.
Can I piggyback on just really quick before you answer it as well, just with the fact that I think this is like month 3 in a row where there's been very, very, very little feedback, like in conversation amongst each other when it comes to agenda items. And so like even more of a reason to say like we probably need to shift in some way to meeting in person, because I can't say that we're fully doing justice to what's being discussed because we're not having discussion on what gets presented. And as a result of that, like if we're not going to discuss things, then we can almost do this all via email, which I think like completely does an injustice to the amazing work that everybody's doing daily and the additional work that people are doing for this committee.
Hi, this is Nikki Stevens, and Amy, I don't know if you want to jump in either. We are talking to Chayla's question. We are internally discussing that, watching the numbers and just to making sure that it's safe for people to return into the office, and maybe offering a virtual option as well as virtual and in person. And Amy, I don't know if you have any additional comments around that.
Well, thanks, Nikki, and Madam Chair and members of the committee. I appreciate and just am grateful for your commitment to want to have meaningful dialogue. I fully agree that I think it'd be great to look at some options moving forward. In terms of having in-person meetings, we are continuing to monitor the transmission rates. As we have not made a decision when we're going to be opening up the office again, although we do anticipate that that could be soon if the transmission rates continue to decline. So we'll be sure to let you know. But just want to be able to offer too, and we've been able to offer this for the board, and we can certainly offer this for the committee as well, but to give the public the opportunity to attend the meeting in Zoom as opposed to YouTube. And so that can really help with that public outreach. We think it's very critically important to be completely transparent and to be able to offer ample opportunities for community input to this process. So if there are members of the public who would like to participate in the Zoom meeting, they just need to let us know, and then we can send them the Zoom information in advance. And we are looking at the possibility of being able to offer a form online just so people can submit that in another way, and to have multiple options for that interaction. But we do really want to make sure that these meetings are meaningful for you and that they're useful for you. So if you have any other ideas, we are certainly open to them and look forward to being able to serve this committee in the best way possible.
Nikki, do you have a question or comment? Where'd she go? Nope.
You're
okay.
on mute, Nikki.
I was so good about that this whole time until now. I agree with Richard and Chayla, and I definitely want to see how we can increase the conversation and what we're doing, rather than it just being heavily focused on information sharing, that we look at, what needs to be discussed. And I think that maybe something that can help that is if we perhaps skip a public meeting of this nature 1 month and maybe come together as a committee in just similar to a board retreat. It would be a committee retreat where we're meeting with each other to review the roles and responsibilities, the charter, any changes that are proposed for the charter, in the charter, just kind of regrouping on what our purposes and our goals are as a committee moving forward. I don't know if that has to be a public meeting or if we can just meet collectively, and whether or not that should be in place of an existing meeting or added on to another meeting. But I just think it would be great to dive into the charter together and review all of these roles and responsibilities, and hear from each other on what we think we can add to it, or maybe there's some stuff in here that it's not as high on the priority list. So just kind of exploring how we set the tone for the next year as a collective committee.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Madam Chair, Nikki, and members of the committee, we can certainly offer a work session to be able to go into more detail. And we can also look at different formats for the agenda in terms of maybe having fewer items or things like that. The direction that we've received from the board and from previous discussions has been to operate as transparently and as inclusively as possible. And so any meeting of the committee then would be
posted, and the public would be at least able to view it, if not able to attend it as well. But we can certainly schedule a study session if that's the direction of the committee and of the chair. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that suggestion. And maybe we can just do a virtual hand raise if anybody is interested in doing that and how they'd like to do the meeting for the roles and responsibilities. And
just as long as we're clear that we're not taking action because that's not been agendized. But if there's informal direction that you'd like to offer, then we're happy to receive that at any time, Madam Chair.
All right, Taylor. Okay, we got lots of hand raises, so yay. Okay, so I think we'll go forward and just do a separate meeting to just go over the rules and responsibilities and governance and things like that. Okay, all right. Thank you all. Really great suggestion and input. And it's very painful being here when you're presenting or talking and then there's not a lot of discussion. So I appreciate that. If there's nothing else, anybody else have anything, comments? Okay, we will adjourn the meeting. So, all right, well, thank you very much and have a good day.